Let's explore the power of the flow state upon our spiritual journey. This morn's lesson is drawn from the 35th verse of Yong-jia xuan-jue's The Song of Enlightenment. Let's chant. Spontaneously occurring Himalayan butter with nothing added. It alone produces my favorite ghee. The nature of randomly noticing and releasing that pervades all natures of shoving and reaching. The Dharma that includes all Dharmas. Okay, there's a lot here. Let's unpack it. So, this is kind of funny. It begins with a nod to a different culture. This is written in China, which is not a dairy culture. But China looked for many years to India as their spiritual lighthouse. And India very much is a dairy culture. So, it is not unusual for a Chinese scholar of Buddhism, to make references that other scholars would understand. And this is exactly what we see here. Himalayan butter, and it's actually translated as ghee in some places, but not all Westerners know what ghee is. Ghee is hyper-clarified butter. Himalayan butter with nothing added. It alone produces my favorite ghee. I first learned about ghee when I was dating a woman who was half East Indian. That's how I learned about ghee. So here's the idea. Himalayan butter with nothing added. Well, what creates butter? Churning milk. Well, what creates milk? Grazing cows. So most cows, there was no factory farms way back when. A grazing cow ate what was ever within reach, or tasted what was ever within reach, and persisted with whichever they found agreeable. So where the cow grazed had a huge effect on what on the style of cheese that was made, or in this case, ghee, butter. For instance, the cows, my understanding, and I may be wrong, is the cows that produce cheddar are the same as the cows that produce Swiss cheese. The difference is where are they grazing. Now, clearly, I'm vegan, so I'm not a big fan of animal exploitation, but I'm trying to pursue this literary vehicle. So here's what's basically being said. This dude has had a lot of ghee, but his favorite comes from the spontaneously grazing Himalayan cows, and there is no need to add anything to it. And what this is a thinly veiled metaphor. And we'll explore exactly what that means in the next page. The nature of randomly noticing and releasing that pervades all natures of shoving and reaching. The Dharma that includes all Dharma. The teaching that includes all the rest of the teachings. Once again, vague yet dense. Thanks. Thanks, yong-jia. So let's explore this. We have two reward systems in the base of our brain. One of them is dopamine oriented, and it is wired just for the procreation of the species. It's not wired for peace or happiness or fulfillment or lasting relationships. It's actually wired for the opposite, to make us so neurotic and so unsatisfied that we are forever copulating with strangers, which is great for the species, bad for the individual. So this fundamental, primal, instinctual drive, which some people have described as basic slavery to our DNA, because our DNA just wants to replicate. It doesn't care what emotions we experience. The primary drives can be described as shoving drives and reaching drives. It has been said that there are 6, to put a finer point on it, there are 6 fundamental drives, and that whenever encountering anything new, that part of brain basically has 6 questions. Do I fuck it? Do I feed on it? Do I fight it? Do I flee from it? Do I faint before it? Do I fawn over it? These are primal drives, the 6 Fs. And that can seem pretty grim. That can seem pretty dark. That doesn't seem fulfilling. There is a secondary, what's it called? Reward system. Instead of being dopamine oriented, it's oxytocin oriented, and it rewards us not with pleasure but with fulfillment. It rewards for cooperation and relationships, professional, personal, recreational, platonic, and intimate. So how do we keep from being a slave to our baser drives of shoving and reaching? Well, we have a region of our brain. Actually, it's a region of our central nervous system, known as our autonomic nervous system. And it dwells in our spinal cord, of all places. The first part of it, it's in halvesies. The first part is our sympathetic nervous system, ensconced within the thoracic region of our spinal cord. That's the part that corresponds with our rib cage. And it evolved in such a manner so that every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we access the capacities of the sympathetic nervous system, which is wired not for active concentration, but instead to simply notice, and to do so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. Every time we exhale, our parasympathetic nervous system within the lower lumbar and the tippy top of the cervical region of the same spinal cord is wired for both physical relaxation and mental release. So this is when we notice things, and this is when we process them through physical relaxation and mental release. Now, this passage has been emphasizing being random. Well, what type of awareness does the sympathetic nervous system generate when we breathe in? Awareness that is vulnerable, passive, visceral, and random. So clearly, I'm not smart enough to have made this up. So this random perception of whatever comes up, whether it's external or internal or physical or mental or pleasurable or painful or interesting or boring or glorious or grotesque, to notice whatever comes up in whatever chaotic sequence it comes up, for as long as it comes up or as briefly as it comes up, is key. Many of us were raised to be controlling. Many of us were raised to feel that, quote, if it's to be, it's up to me, unquote. And so many of us were taught to practice contemplations. First we contemplate this, then we contemplate that, then we contemplate this, then we contemplate that. All very neat, all very tidy, all very organized, all very rigid. But the Buddha's path is not a rigid path, it's a flexible path. It's not a contrived path, it is a laid-back path, a spontaneous path. And for those of us raised with rigidity and order, that can be a scary thing. So we are called back to the example of the best dairy product, the best ghee, comes not from order and design, but from randomly occurring, randomly grazing bovine, who may be very sweet and very good at finding grass and very good at using their horns, but not necessarily Mensa candidates, not necessarily renowned, for isolating the isotope. But just following their intuition, just following their spontaneity, they generate the best ghee from their spontaneous grazing. Similarly, by us being vulnerable to whatever comes up, be it glorious or grotesque, and processing it through our bodies, exhalation and relaxation and release, that's the key to all the teachings. That's the one teaching that leads to all the other teachings. The Buddha taught an eightfold path. 50% of that path pertains to loving kindness. The enemy to loving kindness is fear and aggression, seated in a bottom brain. But through the regular practice of mindfulness and meditation, we access the anterior cingulate gyrate just behind our forehead, the seat of empathy. The highest love is spontaneous and uncontrived. And so we have this wonderful upward spiral that the more we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more love's centered spontaneity we generate, which guides even more mindfulness and meditation, which is rather lovely if you think about it. So let's wrap this morning's passage up in a nice red bow. We're safe. We don't have to have a master plan. We don't have to follow it rigidly. We can walk not in scattered spontaneity, but in the centered spontaneity that comes from using the factory installed equipment in our spinal cord. By using it pleasurably and frequently, our life works out rather well. Our best life is generated simply by allowing our choices and our utterances and our deeds to flow from love's centered spontaneity, to which we gain access from the regular practice of mindfulness and meditation. I look forward to meditating and chanting with you after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I spent more than 8 hours a day, every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the techniques and the teachings and techniques of many schools of Taoism and each school of Buddhism, so that you wouldn't have to. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. Mindfulness and meditation are known by many names, such as Sati Passaddhi, Proto-Zen, Chan, Dhyana, Mahamudra, Mahasandhi, Ati Yoga, Dzogchen, and Treksho. Despite what the screeching fundamentalists insist, they're all the same. About 100 years before the Buddha, good old Lao Tzu wrote the 81 poems of the Tao Te Ching. Within, he coined the phrase, the three treasures. Some translators have rendered them as simplicity, patience, and compassion. After the advent of the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha disseminated, Ancestor Wu redescribed the three treasures as Jing, form, Qi, breath, and Shen, mind. So let's look at the basic meditation practice and see how it dances between those three items. We don't want to concentrate on our breathing. Concentration has nothing to do with mindfulness. Concentration will make us cranky and get us more stuck in our fearful amygdala. Instead of concentrating actively, we simply notice passively, which is the opposite. But we are going to use breath sort of like a metronome. When we feel ourselves breathing in, we can mentally recite the instruction sitting tall and allow our body to comply, allow our body to generate a vertical traction between our tush and our head, the top of our head. During our exhalation, we can do the opposite. We can silently and mentally recite the instruction to relax and allow our body to apply that instruction. That's physically relaxing as best we can. And so we see those three things. We see body and breath and mind. So let's play with this for a few minutes. There's a big fat lie. Some people tell it accidentally because they're lazy-minded. Other people teach it because they have an agenda. But here's the big fat ugly lie. You must not think. Thinking is the monkey mind, and it is an indictment. No, don't think. Malarkey. We are wired to perceive, emote, intend, reason, recall, and imagine. That is what our minds have evolved to do. The first enlightenment factor is mindfulness, which infers that we notice mind's functions. So, rather than fight what's going on, we are accepted. We notice it. Like a mother cat, tolerant of the antics of her kittens. So, as we silently and mentally recite sitting tall during our inhalation, we are not deaf to the activity of mind. We are aware of it peripherally. As we relax into our exhalation, we physically not only relax our body, but relax our resistance to whatever we perceive during our previous inhalation. As if that which we perceived was as non-graspable as a vast empty void. What's an example of a non-graspable vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which although is tantalizing to the eye, is not graspable to the hands. Sadly, contemporary Zen has a lot of poorly understood aphorisms. And when a lazy-minded teacher does not understand something, they are happy to be content to pretend that's powerful, but it's not. Consider the phrase, think, no thinking. It doesn't mean we think about not thinking. It means this. As we breathe in, our mind is wired to do all sorts of interesting things. You know, perceive, emote, intend, reason, recall, and imagine. As we exhale, our mind is wired to relax and release. So in other words, it's good that we notice what's going on. It's bad if we try to control what's going on. Instead, sit back and watch the show. There are so many things in this world that we live in that are completely out of our control. But at times, we can sit up straight, if even for a few moments. At times, we can relax and release, at least for a few moments. The sixth fold of the Buddha's eightfold path is joyful enthusiasm. Joy is the fourth of 7 enlightenment factors, and we access it simply by playing with these instructions. Sometimes it's a very coarse joy, usually it's a very subtle joy. The joy is simply enjoying your posture and enjoying and relaxing. Like enjoying a bit of bread and then enjoying a sip of water. Let's switch gears now from the 3-syllable paradigm to its 1-syllable counterpart. As we breathe in, let's silently and mentally recite the adjective tall. As we exhale, let's silently and mentally recite the 1-syllable verb ease, which functions as a synonym of relax. We can think of the path to enlightenment in 2 aspects, a mental aspect and a physical aspect. If you've been practicing sitting meditation and other traditions, then sitting can be effortless for you. Most of us are new to sitting. And so here's a simple way to master sitting in less than 3 months. The first week, sit as impeccably as you can for 5 minutes once every 12 hours. Just set your timer on your smartphone. The second week, set your timer for 10 minutes. The third week, set your timer for 15 minutes. Each week, increasing the sitting timer by an additional 5 minutes. By the conclusion of the 12th week, your body would have acclimated to sitting for an hour at a time. Now, what about the mental training? It's simple. Come to these live streams. They're free. They stream live every 12 hours. You'll learn all you need to do to master the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Although sitting could take most of us about 3 months to master, the mental aspect can be mastered in like a week. So there's nothing mystical, there's nothing magical. If someone tries to tell you it's mystical and difficult, they're probably trying to sell you something, or they are just woefully confused. As we sit in meditation, we might remember things that people have done or said in reality or in dreams. It is not our job to tell ourselves stories about those things, although we might do it inadvertently. It's our job to simply notice whatever comes up as we breathe in and physically relax as best we can while we breathe out. That is how we process this, what Shakespeare referred to in Hamlet as the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Welcome to this morning's live stream. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist chanting, Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. Please do not wait until the end. Rather, strike while the iron is hot. As you breathe in, please silently and mentally recite the word tall as you generate a vertical traction between your head and your tush. As you exhale, please silently and mentally recite the verb ease as you give your body permission to relax. The great irony of mindfulness and meditation is that it takes place in the autonomic nervous system in our spinal cord, like the tail of a tadpole. Of course, the 3-pound supercomputer between our ears doesn't want to be left out. It wants to help. And sometimes in the name of helping, it does more harm than good. When I was a kid and wanted to help, my stepfather would have me hold the flashlight. That was my job. Similarly, the equivalent of that, the contemplative equivalent of our brain holding the flashlight, is the silent mental recitation of the word tal as we breathe in and the verb ease as we breathe out. That way our brain does not feel left out, but it does not undermine the process. One of my students lives in the Bible Belt. And one time she was sitting under a tree meditating. Now, of course, her nephew thought that odd. So he thought it would be helpful if he ran up to her and screamed in her ear, "What are you doing?" Not everyone is going to applaud our efforts, even though if someone is enthusiastic enough about their Bible and they read Strong's exhaustive concordance of the Old and New Testaments, they'll see there are scores, if not hundreds, of references to meditation in the Bible, the majority of which are all positive. I tend to check for questions approximately once every 9 minutes or so. So if you write a question, it feels like it's taking a while for me to respond, please do not take that personally. When you feel pain in your body, and you will eventually, respect that pain. That pain could be a message to drink more water, or to subtly adjust your posture, or to make lifestyle changes such as more sleep, fresh air, sunshine, exercise, a whole food vegan diet. We evolved the capacity to feel pain, not with that so that we would have something to ignore, but as an early warning system. Because sometimes a little pain can turn into a lot of pain, which can turn to a lot of injury if the little symptoms were ignored. Indirectly, pain can be something else we just notice and release, but only after we've done what we can to learn from its lessons, to make the adjustments we need to thrive. Welcome to this morning's live stream. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist chanting, Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. Please do not wait until the end. Rather, strike while the iron is hot. As you breathe in, please silently and mentally recite the adjective tall as you do your best to generate a vertical traction between your head and your tush. During each exhalation, please silently and mentally recite the verb ease as you do your best to relax. I often check for questions once every 9 minutes or so. So if it seems a short eternity until I get to your question, please do not take that personally. Welcome to this morning's live stream. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist chanting, Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. Please do not wait until the end. Rather, instead, strike while the iron is hot, metaphorically speaking. As you breathe in, please silently and mentally recite the adjective tall as you do your best to develop a bit of traction between your head and your tesh. As you exhale, please silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease as you do your best to physically relax. Let us seal this morning's practice with a bit of the old chanting. It is said that Xuan-jue and Pusa an archetype of love and letting go, while moving in the deep peace of the perfect understanding of awareness and release. And sing it that, let's do it with percussively chanting. It is and then Xuan-jue and Pusa an archetype of love and letting go, while moving in the deep peace of the perfect understanding of awareness and release. Shed light on the five aggregates and found them equally empty. After this realization, she made peace with all pain. Listen, Shariputra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form does not differ from emptiness, emptiness does not differ from form. The same is true with feeling, appraisal, impulse, and awareness. Listen, Shariputra, all phenomena are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither corrupted nor purified, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no appraisal, no impulse, and no awareness that once perceived cannot be released. No sensation, no flavor, no scent, no sound, no sight, no phenomena that once perceived cannot be released. No body, no tongue, no nose, no ears, no eyes, no mind that once perceived cannot be released. No feeling, no tasting, no smelling, no hearing, no seeing, no noticing that once perceived cannot be released. No interdependent origins and no extinction of them, from confusion to aging and death that once perceived cannot be released. No stress, no confusion, no liberation, no path, no understanding, no attainment that once perceived cannot be released. Because there is no attainment that once perceived cannot be released. The Bodhisattva archetypes of awareness and letting go supported by the perfection of understanding find no obstacles for the minds that once perceived cannot be released. Having no obstacles that once perceived cannot be released, they transcend the tyranny of fear, liberating themselves forever from the tyranny of illusion and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas of the past, present, and future, thanks to this perfect understanding of noticing and releasing, arrive at full right and universal enlightenment. Therefore, one should know that this perfect understanding of noticing and releasing is like a great mantra, is like an unequaled mantra. The destroyer of the tyranny of all suffering, the incorruptible truth. A mantra of prajna paramita's perfect wisdom of awareness and release could therefore be proclaimed. This is the mantra gate gate para samgate bodhi swaha. Go completely and perfectly go to enlightenment. May it be so. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 10 and a third hours, we could, I would very much like to return to lead this evening's meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.